Hey there, class. Dr. Steve here, and welcome to the psychoanalytic section of the course. Yes, the psychoanalytic section, the psychodynamic section. A little controversial, this one. Depending on who you ask, Sigmund Freud is a little bit of a polarizing character in some of his perspectives and the way that he described human behavior and the influences to what causes human behavior. And I can remember learning about Freud and having my same reaction or a similar reaction to I'm not sure if that fits. That seems reasonable, but I don't know. But I will tell you, when I started working with clients, I remember sitting across from them often and scratching my head and being like, gosh, okay, why are they reacting this way? Or why are they viewing this otherwise pretty ambiguous situation in such a dramatic type of way when nothing big actually really happened? And over time, I started to realize that it's rarely about what is happening now in a person's life. I shouldn't say rarely. It's sometimes not always about what is happening now in a person's life. It is about what this particular moment that the individual is currently experiencing reminds them of. The picture or the story that they're reacting to is a picture of a story that they have heard before, or that it is eliciting within them. And that is where psychodynamic theory really becomes useful, in that we help people to explore the historical influences that have led us to see things in the way that we see them. You see, psychodynamic theories, starting with Sigmund Freud and evolving to the others, focus on a few key areas. First off, early child experiences matter. All right? Early child experiences matter. Unconscious processes influence behavior. Another massive piece here. Unconscious things we are not even aware of. Relationships, particularly early relationships, shape personality. So your upbringing matters. Freud emphasized that there are certain developmental stages and internal conflict that we experience. And later theorists actually shifted more towards this look at like relationships and attachment. Not surprising. I mean, we give Freud a hard time, but this wouldn't be surprising. I mean, if you grew up in a household of parents that were incredibly loving and laughed at your jokes, you're probably going to grow up into an early adult expecting love and laughter from other people in your life. Whereas if you were constantly criticized, you would likely expect other criticism in your life as well. So at the surface, it seems like a very, very reasonable way to look at the influences that our history has on our current behaviors. So instead of us asking, again, what are you doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? Instead, a psychodynamic approach asks, where did you learn to be this way? Where did you learn to be this way? And this lens really adds a lot of depth, because without it, behavior can feel very random. It could feel very irrational. But when you start to map it back to the overly critical parent is the adult with harsh self-talk. That inconsistent caregiver leads to a person who has difficulty trusting others. That overly nurturing parent has caused somebody to have challenges with independence. And so you begin to see these patterns, and it really helps not just explain behavior, but it provides greater meaning, greater sensitivity, and understanding behind one's emotional reactions. So in practice, when I'm in front of a client, it doesn't mean that I blame a parent for anything. It doesn't mean we have to dig endlessly into childhood. But what it does mean is that we can stay curious about the patterns, the historical patterns that we might notice. And if we see something that's like, this situation feels bigger than it needs to be, or they're expecting a reaction that isn't happening, or this is a dynamic that feels very familiar to them or that we've seen occur before, that door opens to insight. Where have you experienced this before? And that's the question that we can be curious about. What does this interaction that you're having with this person today as an adult, what does that interaction remind you of? Who does it remind you of? And that awareness alone can really shift how someone responds to the present. And so psychodynamic theory really reminds us of something simple but powerful. People make sense once you understand their history. So you'll notice in all of these different theories that we're operating from, they all kind of layer in and fold in to each other, right? We can't understand one's thoughts about a situation if we don't understand the history behind them. We can't understand the traits and the behaviors that we engage in if we don't and aren't curious about where they might have manifested from. And it becomes this balance as clinicians for us to think through and engage in the art of extracting information and being curious about information that creates this whole picture of the client. People make sense once you understand their history. And it's not going to explain everything, but it gives us a solid enough lens to understand why people feel and respond the way that they do. And it's all a hypothesis. It is a working hypothesis that you engage with your client on. I wonder about something. You told me about this particular parent you had and how they treated you every single time you brought home an A report card. I wonder if that in some way influences how you're viewing the successes that you have in life today. I'm just curious. Let's put it on the workbench and talk about it. I'm not cause and effect. I'm not saying this is 100% why you are the way you are. But by understanding and being curious about the influence that one's history has on the current make of today, it offers additional depth, substance, and understanding of why we are the way we are. So with that, again, I'm curious about what your thoughts are, and I'll be looking in the chat room for that. In the meantime, have a fantastic day and be curious. What happened before that is impacting me now? Talk to you soon.